just be building a website effectively using HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And once we have built our website, we will use PhoneGap to to create an app from the website. What PhoneGap does is it provides a wrapper for the phone or the tablet's native browser. So Android tablets have like the Android browser. Or newer ones, I guess, just Chrome is the native browser. Apple devices have the Safari mobile browser. And so PhoneGap will sort of wrap the browser so that it doesn't look like a browser. It looks just like you're opening any app. And it'll open up your website in the browser. And so it's basically, creating your mobile app then is sort of just like creating a website. There are a few extra things that you can do with PhoneGap apps that you can't do with regular websites. Okay, so it's a little bit better than just making a website. And those things are, you can just like apps that are written in in other ways can do. You can interact with the phone's operating system, so you can save files. You can have like notifications that pop up, little notifications if you use a smartphone or a tablet that come up at the top of your screen every now and then. You can create those. You can do things like add events to a calendar. Like your Android, I think it maps to your Gmail calendar automatically. I'm not sure. I think Apple has like an iCalendar or something like that. And then you can also interact with the hardware of the phone. So you can do things like use the camera or the accelerometer, so you can tell if they're tilting forward or to the side or that kind of thing. Geolocation, the GPS. So all the cool stuff that apps can, that normally you would, of course, normally you wouldn't use. Well, I say normally, creating apps with HTML code is kind of becoming the new normal. But historically, you would have to build apps separately for each platform in what we call native code. And so you'd have to learn a whole new programming language in order to make an Android app. You'd have to learn Java. Or then if you wanted to make an app for iPhone, you'd have to learn another language, which we call Objective-C. But with PhoneGap and with other frameworks that are like PhoneGap, we're able to use technologies like HTML and CSS and JavaScript that many people already know from building websites, and we can use those to create not just to create mobile apps, which it's already convenient that we can just use web technologies, but in fact we can make we can code it once and it will port to all these different platforms. So you can make iOS games without learning C++. Yes. Now the thing about games in particular is that games can be a little trickier if you're specifically looking to make a game. We're sort of making just sort of generic apps, which aren't necessarily games that have a lot of moving parts. You can certainly it's certainly possible to make games that are in browser using HTML5 or games that just use JavaScript. Okay, those exist. For the really cool games, you may want to use specifically a game development platform, and some of those require will require native code, or there are platforms like Unity, which allow you to well, you still need to learn one of the scripting languages for Unity, but it does a lot of the work for you so that you can port it onto different platforms. But in this particular course, we're looking more at sort of sort of generic apps that aren't necessarily games per se. Although you could, there are some sorts of games you certainly could create with this method. Okay, so last week we had I think we had 3 interns here last week, and we went through sort of a demonstration of PhoneGap and how to build an app using PhoneGap. We took a simple site, said "Hello World," and then we used PhoneGap to build that into an actual app. So I think just so we can move on, we're not going to go back over that right now, but there will be I wouldn't worry about that too much because there we'll be building apps. We'll be going over that step at least a couple more times over the course of this webcast series because we'll be building more apps. Today, what I'd like to do is start going in depth into some web technologies. In particular, we're going to look at CSS today and learn about a CSS framework called Bootstrap. Well, I guess Bootstrap is really a whole front-end framework. There's some JavaScript stuff that comes with Bootstrap too, but we're going to worry mostly about CSS today. And so I know Nina said last week that Nina had used Bootstrap in the past, actually. Alex, just so I know where you guys are coming from, Alex, have you? What is your experience with CSS, and have you ever seen Bootstrap before? If you haven't seen it before, that's fine. It's great. We can learn something new today. Okay. Let's do a quick. We'll do a quick little review of CSS. I know Alex you've probably made like a personal website or something with Build It Yourself. Is that right? Okay, great. Okay, perfect, wonderful. That's fantastic. I think you will enjoy seeing Bootstrap because it's pretty fun. It makes CSS a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. Okay. So I have here, I'm using NetBeans today. You of course can use any any text editor or development environment that you want, that you're comfortable with. Actually, first of all, why don't I show you kind of the end target of the next couple weeks. This is a little demo that I made for an app called Joke of the Day. And so here's what, now your Joke of the Day app may end up looking a lot cooler than mine. This is pretty simple. But here I have, just the title, and I have a button here that I can click to reveal the punchline to my joke. And there's my joke of the day. And in fact, if I have it kind of picking a random joke. So here's another joke. So each time you boot up the app, you get a different joke. Maybe I want to add some features to this eventually, like a button that'll just get another joke for you. If you don't want to wait until the next time you boot up the app, or maybe maybe we make it a true joke of the day where you can only get one joke each day. There's some stuff I could add to this. For now, it's just a simple get a joke, press the button, and you get the punchline.
Cool. Jacob, it doesn't sound to me like it'd be much more effort to just put pictures in there instead of text.
Certainly, we could plant pictures in here if we wanted.
or even audio tracks so that it talks to you?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay.
Potentially.
Okay, just checking.
Sure. And one thing I want to point out about this site is that I've used Bootstrap on this site, which if you've seen Bootstrap before, you probably recognize just some of the simple Bootstrap styles here. And one of the cool things about Bootstrap is that it can be used to make a responsive design. And what do I mean by responsive? I mean it responds to how big your screen is. So I can make this screen smaller, and notice how how the button is now underneath the joke. And if I expand my browser to make it wider, now they're back side by side again. And so the reason I might want to do this is because, well, what if they're on a tablet with a big screen? Maybe it's better in that case if they're side by side like this. But if I'm on a phone with a tiny screen, I probably want that button underneath like that, so I can make better use of the space and no one has to scroll side to side. So we'll see how to do that. For starters, let's look at some of this. Oops. There we go. Okay. I'm going to start with a little demonstration here. I just have an empty. I just made an empty web page here. It's an empty index.html. And I have a spot here for some CSS, which I haven't made yet. Well, just by quick review, okay, we can have elements like divs. Let's see, we can have links, right? And we can have, any other element. And we can run this in a browser. And okay, there we go. We have some HTML on our page. And now we can start to style this with CSS. Okay, so here I actually already have a link tag. A link is what you use to add in an external CSS style sheet. And I'm going to add a CSS folder to my project just to keep things organized. I'm going to make a file here called site.css. So really all I did, I know NetBeans, creates some, creates a lot of code there for, or some comments and sometimes some code for me automatically. But really all I've done is I've created a folder called CSS, and I put a site.css inside it. And and on my index, I have a link with relation equals style sheet. That's rel equals style sheet, and then I type is CSS, and then href for the path to my CSS file. So it's the standard way. Hi, Shirley. Welcome. Shirley, we're learning about, we're reviewing CSS at least. No worries.
Oh, cool. CSS is fun.
Yep. Okay, so CSS, there are a few different types of CSS selectors that we use all the time. One is we can just use the type of element. So I can say div, and then inside the div rule, I can add any number of rules. Aquamarine, interesting. So I can do that, and I'm actually going to use Firefox. NetBeans is pretty neat. You can just switch browsers just like that. Okay, now this div, of course, divs expand the width of the browser by default, or the width of their container, I should say, by default. Now that you can see that background color is there. There are class selectors. So if I give this, I give an element a class, I've call it some class, and then I can access that in CSS using a period, so dot some class. And let's see, there's we can use color to establish the like the font color. Now with colors, there are some colors where you can use words like this and it'll just work. For sometimes you'll have to use like the hex colors, where you would say hashtag and then some hex value. But for now, for this demonstration purposes, I think it's fine to just use the words and touch that, and you see we didn't actually use P as a CSS selector. We used some class, and so of course we can create a different P element if we wanted, and and that would if it had a different class, it would have a different style because this style is only for that particular class. Okay, now let's talk about how some CSS rules can override other CSS rules. Okay, now look at this. Now I have a P with my class now inside this div. Okay, and if we look at this right now, you can see that we have they're both blue because this some class rule is applying to both this P and this P. Okay, but what if I create a rule like this, where I say div some class red. Oh well, okay. First of all, even before that, what if I create the same rule and it comes after? What happens? Create that the same selector, but I have a different color. What's going to happen? Well, all the text is red. And why is that? It's because the second one overrides the first one. So that's important for what we're going to do in a minute, is that if you have the same selector, the second one overrides the first one. Shirley's correct. You can also use exclamation point important. However, using the important keyword is generally considered a bad practice. That's sort of a worst case scenario only thing that you want to use. The reason is it's because you can easily lose track of where those are, and what happens when later on you actually do want to override that style. And you have trouble doing that because it has an important keyword on it. So we want to, as much as possible, we want to avoid using exclamation point important. another thing we can do is write selectors like this. And what this selector means with the space in the middle means that this rule applies to things with some class that fall inside of a div. Okay, and if we look at this, you can see now that this is blue. Okay. And this is blue because this, why is that blue? Because this, we have this selector, of course, that applies to the sum class inside a div. But then later on, we have this color red. Shouldn't this one override the other one? Well, it doesn't, because specificity is important in CSS. So because this one is more specific, it's not just any sum class, it's some classes that are inside divs. Because it's more specific, it takes precedence over the less specific rule, even though the less specific rule came later. Does this kind of make sense so far? I know you guys have seen some CSS before. The rules, the rules of inheritance, the rules of what overrides everything else. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. So of course, you can go about just creating an entire site, adding your own classes that you've defined and writing CSS rules for them. And it's a good exercise, certainly. It can be a lot of work. It can certainly be a lot of work to make a great looking site sort of from scratch, just writing all your CSS from scratch. And so there are a number of what we call CSS frameworks where people have created CSS code for us already and have made it available for everyone to freely use. And one of the most popular CSS frameworks is called Bootstrap. And I will put that link in the chat bar. You can click download on the site to download Bootstrap. And for now, there's a couple different options. For now, I'm just going to download the CSS version. We're learning about CSS right now. And when I click download, it's taking a little while since I'm on WebEx. Usually it's pretty quick. And here's what I get when I download Bootstrap. Let's take a look. Okay, there's a CSS folder, a fonts folder, and a JS for JavaScript folder. And you can see there are CSS files in here. And there are some special font files in here, which are pretty cool. We're not going to talk about fonts in depth today. And then there are JavaScript files as well, which we're not going to worry about too much today, but those are a cool part of Bootstrap too. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to find my website. Okay, here's my website, my demo website that we've been making so far with my index.html and my CSS folder.
Excuse me, Jacob. This is really interesting. Could you make sure we document this on our wiki, or maybe before the end of the class, ask Alex, Nina, and Shirley to upgrade our wiki to reflect links to this tool?
Sure.
Great.
Okay, so what I'm going to do to use Bootstrap in my project is I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to take the Bootstrap CSS files. Now there's, and move them into my project. Now notice this bootstrap.min.css. Let's take a look at each of these. First of all, let's take a look at bootstrap.css. Okay, bootstrap.css, and this should all look kind of familiar. Here's a bunch of CSS rules. There's a whole bunch of CSS rules. This is an enormous file. Okay, just look at this scroll bar. This is an enormous file. Look at that. Almost 6,000 lines of CSS. That is pretty intense. Okay. Bootstrap, that's why they make a bootstrap.min.css. And this is what we call a minified version. Okay, it has all the same information, but it's all scrunched together. There are no comments in this code. There's no white space. It's just everything scrunched together so that it's a little bit smaller than just the than the standard bootstrap.css. So it's not as it doesn't take as much time for your website user or to download, or in our case, it won't make a huge difference since it's going to be part of an app in any case. But still, a good practice to use use the minified version, and you can use the you can look at the full version if you want to just see what's going on, since the minified version is harder to read. So what we're going to do is I'm going to now link in. I'm going to comment out my old style sheet for now, and I will add in bootstrap.min.css. Okay. And I'm going to get rid of my old, well, okay, it's fine. I'll leave my classes there for now. First of all, let's look, just after having done that, let's look at what happens to my page. Okay, now since I took out my old CSS, oops, a typo there. I was going to say it should, okay, there we go. So since I took out my old CSS, the styles have changed a little bit. One more thing I'm going to do so we can start really seeing what Bootstrap kind of looks like is I need to make a fonts folder. Well, really, I just could have pulled this over, and I'll pull over the JavaScript as well. Okay, so now I have all those Bootstrap files in my web project. And there they are in NetBeans. What we can start to do here is start adding Bootstrap classes to, oh, forgot the full path. It's in the CSS folder. There we go. Okay, so now something changed a little bit. You can see the spacing kind of changed, and the font changed. Bootstrap has a default font that's different than what I was using before. So now we have Bootstrap working on this page, and what we can do is we can use special Bootstrap classes. Okay, so one common class is a container. which is, in fact, I'm going to put everything inside a container. And we can see what that does. The container automatically kind of pushes things to the center of the page a little bit. We can create, well, something I used in the Joke of the Day project was something we call a Jumbotron. So I make a div with class Jumbotron, and that's a class that Bootstrap already has CSS defined for. And there you go. This is, that you can see that the text is a little bigger. You can see that sort of background that it added. You can tell this is something, it's very similar to what I ended up with using for my Joke of the Day. And there are a whole bunch of different Bootstrap classes that do fun things. They give you cool styling for your buttons. Okay, so if I want to make a button, I give it a class of button, and just giving it a class of button makes it look pretty cool. Well, cool is maybe a subjective term. It's a little plain right now until I start adding more classes to it, where I can say, well, what is the purpose of this button? Is it a button danger, which means that's like something you press to delete something? Is it a button primary, which is sort of like the, we'll see that, there you go, which is sort of like the main thing that you want your users to click on. There are different button styles that come with default colors, like this one I guess is blue. Let me get rid of everything else here for a second. For an exhaustive list of Bootstrap styles, we can go to back to getbootstrap.com, and you can click up here on the CSS portion, and you can see like here on the buttons section, you can see here if you give it a button-default, that's what it looks like, or button-primary, that's what we used. Success, info, warning, danger. So depending on what purpose you have in mind for your button, you can give it a different class, and there are different default colors that come with each of those. You can even attach different classes that change their size. So if they're large, you do button-LG. If they're small, you can do a button-SM. All kinds of fun stuff. I'm going to scroll back to the top of the page and go to this next tab, which is Components. This Components page shows a lot of the slightly more complicated stuff you can do with Bootstrap. And you can see on the navigation bar over here some of the different things that are available. Jumbotron is one that we've already seen. And you can see just to create a Jumbotron there, you just do a div with class Jumbotron. That's a pretty simple one. One that that I use oftentimes is the nav bar, which creates just that navigation bar at the top of the screen. And you can make it stick to the top of the screen if you just have it at the kind of at the top of your page. And that's right here they have an HTML5 element called a nav, NAV, which is pretty cool. You can also just use a div and give it these classes, navbar default, and it'll end up looking like this. And then of course they have a bunch of stuff inside this navbar too. The cool thing about the navbar, well, I'm going to have to scroll back to find it. Here's an example up here of the navbar. This is a Bootstrap, this Bootstrap website uses Bootstrap, of course. When you make your screen smaller, the nav bar collapses and can leave this little toggle thing. And this is designed for phones because you don't want to have, you want to have all this stuff available, but you don't want it taking up a bunch of the screen on your phone. So you have this little toggle thing to toggle your navigation menu. And Bootstrap makes creating all of these things really easy because you can just go to this Bootstrap site and look at all these examples, and they show you the HTML code that you need to use in order to create all these different all these little different components of your website. So it's really nifty. If you haven't already, do download, do go to this Bootstrap site and download Bootstrap so you can start playing around with that. One more thing I want to show in Bootstrap before I turn it over to you guys to do a little exercise, and that is this Getting Started tab. Okay. There's a link here. This page has your links to download Bootstrap, but it also has examples. And the examples here are a great way to kickstart your creating your pages with Bootstrap. You can take a look at here. This is a good one. You can take a look at this page, and you can see this one has a jumbotron that spans the width of the page. It also has a nav bar up top. And it has some content here too. And this is an example that Bootstrap provides for you to build off of if you want to. And in fact, we can, you can look at the HTML here and sort of copy it into your site if you want to. One of the things another tool I like to use. I like to use the developer tools in Firefox a little better than those in Chrome. This is something called Firebug, which you can download for Firefox, or you can also press, I think it's F12 to pull up the standard developer tools in Firefox. I think F12 is pretty universal. I'm not sure what you press on a Mac for those of you using Apple. But here, I think this is a great little view of the HTML, and you can see there's a div with classes navbar. There's actually a class called navbar fixed top. That means that as we scroll down, you see that navbar doesn't move. It's because it's fixed at the top. It's because you gave it that navbar fixed top. And again, Bootstrap takes care of that for us. We just add that class in, and it takes care of that for us. So my challenge for you guys is to download Bootstrap and take a look at one of the examples. And using one of the examples that you see on the Bootstrap website, and there are a few here. There are a few pretty simple ones here too. Try creating a simple page that says joke of the day and has a joke and has a button. And if you're comfortable with JavaScript and you want to try and make the button actually show a joke when you click the button, that's fine. But we can get to JavaScript. We'll talk about jQuery and JavaScript next week. But for today, I would say just try building off of one of these Bootstrap examples to get a website that says joke of the day and has a button. And in fact, do I still have my joke of the day? There it is. So here's an example. I'll show you my code for the joke of the day, my HTML. I have to be careful to use the right. I have a couple monitors here, and only one of them is being shared, so I have to be careful. So I have I have here actually, I have some of my own CSS here too, but the key point is that I have my bootstrap.min.css included, and I have a class of Jumbotron with an H1 inside the Jumbotron, so that's my header. That's why that looks bigger than everything else, because it's an H1. And I have a class container, and then I have some divs inside there and a button that has class button primary. We didn't talk about the grid system, what's called the grid system in Bootstrap yet, but it's a way to create column layouts. So I actually have this as sort of a column layout, which don't worry about too much as of yet. You can read about that if you want. We can cover it next time. But I have a couple classes here that are Bootstrap classes that help me create that column layout. And then I've got some JavaScript to actually handle the jokes, which we'll worry about next time. So yeah, it's pretty simple in terms of the HTML code here. Thanks to Bootstrap, it looks a little bit presentable. So I will stop talking now, and I will be here to answer questions that you guys might have as you're trying to get this Bootstrap working on your page. So we'll take the remainder of the webcast now for you guys to start playing around. And maybe if we have time, maybe one of you guys can share your desktop and we can see what you've made. Sound like a plan?
Jacob, thank you. Sounds great. I love what you're doing. I think there's a lot of other interns who would like to be keyed in on this webcast, so I recorded it.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob.
Sure, go ahead, Alex. A good text editor for Mac. I don't have any personal experience with Mac. Yeah, so yeah, Nina actually would probably know better than I would. Nina uses Mac's Sublime Text. I've heard of Sublime Text. I think you'd take Nina's recommendation there. Cool.
Great, Nina. We're going to document this on our website because everyone is asking for that. Is it freeware, Nina? Ah, okay.
Free, as in you do need to buy they kind of have an unlimited free trial, so in that sense it is.
It has a free trial, but then there's a license to it.
There's a license if you want to use it commercially, but if you're using it personally, then it's fine.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, great.
So anyway,
that's great.
But yeah, I'm hearing really good things about Atom. I just got my invite from, because I signed up for the beta a while ago, and they finally gave me one. So.
People take text editors for granted, but they shouldn't. Text editors are really, really important in being efficient. No, Jacob, is that your experience?
Yep. Good text editor can help you avoid a lot of headaches.
Yeah, right. So even if you have to invest in one, I mean, we want to use tools that are all freeware, but at least for the interns.
Yeah, well, Atom's looking pretty good, but there is a long wait for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's just it's in beta.
Yeah, but it is. I haven't quite started using it as my main one just because I don't know. I use Sublime a lot already. I have it kind of set up the way I want it. But the good thing about Atom is that there are a lot of packages that you can install onto it. I mean, same with Sublime as well, but it's like anything with something where you can install the stuff you need on it makes me quite happy.
Spelling checkers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like the other day I was having an issue where it wasn't highlighting brackets in Ruby, because in Ruby you don't just have normal brackets, you have do's and ends, which most text editors kind of like they don't register as brackets, which, fair enough, they're words, not brackets. So I found a package for Sublime which highlights do's and ends as brackets, and so you can just like make it do anything basically, which is what I like.
Very cool.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, is that oftentimes the best editor to use depends on what language and what technologies you're coding in.
That's a good point. Yeah.
For websites, Sublime, I've heard good things about. NetBeans for Windows, I've been really enjoying NetBeans. I've tried a couple other ones that NetBeans is probably the best open source, the best free one that I've used. There's, Visual Studio is fantastic if you're doing Microsoft, if you're using Microsoft technologies. Visual Studio is pretty strong, although there's like a free version of Visual Studio that has fewer features, and then a paid version. But even the free version is pretty good.
Very interesting. Good question, Alex.
Yep.
Jacob, I can see this application evolving to joke of the month, quote of the month, picture of the month. I would love to see a riff of the month, a guitar riff or a piano riff of the day, riff of the day. I could see this going in a lot of different directions that could tie into build it yourself, like bullet blocks, quote of the day, or module of the day. So once we get the functionality working and the database, the back-end database working, it would be nice to explore ways to modify that so that the database can load pictures, audio, and we can make the user interface more and more build it yourself, playful like.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard you talk at all yet about the database that's storing all of this. Are you?
Right. And my little, I mean, we could very easily use a database to do this. For my demo, I actually I'm not using a database. This is all just hard coded in the JavaScript.
Yeah. Yeah, I expected that was the case. Okay. So maybe we can.
Yeah, here I actually just have a JavaScript array of jokes here.
Cool. Maybe we can.
That's certainly certainly a future enhancement.
Yeah. Great. Okay, guys. Sounds to me like I assume everyone's not having any trouble downloading, which is where you could use Jacob's advice. Sounds to me like you guys over the week, if you have time to explore this and work on the exercise Jacob proposed, and next week we can do a little show and tell before we go on to more evolution of the application.
Feel free to shoot me a question by email. Anytime.
Thanks,
we will. I think we'll email out. We should post. I think we'll post kind of what we did today on the wiki and I think maybe we can just email out a link to the wiki then. Does that sound like a good plan, John?
Yeah. Thanks for remembering that, Jacob. I like to keep that. Make sure we, allocate time to keep our project management site updated. That's just general good practice. We want all the interns to get accustomed to the end of this class. Let's update our wiki. Okay. All right, Jacob. Thank you. See you next week.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing my desktop there.
See you, Alex, Shirley, Nina. Have a good week.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, Shirley. Bye, Alex. Fantastic, Jacob. Thank you.
Thanks, John.